Aloha, and welcome again to the Believer's Journey. It's really nice to have you here today. And as we get going on the Ten Commandments, we're now in the fourth commandment, or the fourth statement, which is to keep the Sabbath day holy. And Sabbath day is actually a very huge, it's contention between a lot of believers, a lot of Christians, those who want to follow the law, those that don't, want the grace, and so forth. So we have a lot of contention here and division. And so I want to try to bring it together if possible. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for watching us, joining us today, and I hope that you'll get something out of today's program. If you have any questions at all, or if you have anything you want to say, please write me, email me, whether it be on here, YouTube, or whether it be to my email. You have them both. And if, I will get back to you. And I really just hope everybody has the rest of the year is going to be a good year. So here we go as we start. So again, I'm going to start with the very first verse, or second verse. I am the Lord your God. In other words, he's saying he's your creator, your ruler, your almighty source of all moral authority. Okay, he is the supreme being. And then he goes on to say, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, out of slavery or oppression. So this is really important as we go on, especially to this particular commandment here, because when he talks about the Sabbath day, this is something they never had in Egypt. They were in slavery, and I imagine as slaves, they probably worked, maybe 7 days a week. They probably didn't have a lot of things that they were given to them because they were slaves. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and how slavery can be part of your life today. But we want to really key in on this very commandment, this statement, if you will, and really mention it and get through this in a way that sounds like we can all agree on something here on this statement. Okay? So in Exodus 20, verses 8 through 11, it says this: Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. But on the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. Okay? Verse 11, for in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and he rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and he made it holy. Okay? So first off, let's conquer something I know that a lot of people have a problem with is the differences between Sunday and Saturday. Okay? So first off, the Sabbath day does not mean Sunday. It does not mean the Lord's Day as we know it as a Sunday. Okay? It doesn't mean Saturday. Okay? The Sabbath does not mean Saturday, does not mean Sunday, nor does it even mean the seventh day. The Sabbath is the seventh day. Okay? So that is what it is. It's equivalent to what you would call an intermission, for example. That's probably a good translation for the word Sabbath. It's an intermission. It's when God rested after he created all that he created in the heavens and the earth. And he took that day, he called it the Sabbath, and it was his day of rest. And he claimed to make it holy. Okay, it was an intermission, a place of time of rest. So back in biblical times, Saturday was considered the Sabbath day. Okay, everything revolved around the same schedule for centuries. Okay, maybe millennia, actually. However, in today's world, many people work on Saturday just for survival, to make ends meet, to be able to have a roof over your head. So sometimes it's not convenient to take a Saturday off to work on it on a Saturday, even though that's the way it's been for thousands of years. So we need to consider that when people go to church or go to services on a Sunday, okay, instead of a Saturday, or maybe they don't even have a weekend at all, and so they go to Bible studies and services on what they can do on a Wednesday or a Tuesday. The issue is the day itself. What day are we going to take? It's the seventh day of our lives. Okay, that's not me personally, but a lot of people's lives where they don't have a weekend or they don't have a Saturday, they don't have a Sunday. So you need to pick a day that is your Sabbath, that is your day of intermission, if you will, so that you can honor the Lord. Okay, so your Sabbath or intermission day can be any day of the week, depending on your schedule. Okay, for believers of Jesus, Sunday is their chosen day to honor God for most of the world. Okay, the actual specific day of the week is not an issue here. It's not an issue with me. It's taking a Sabbath day, a day of intermission, in honor and obedience to the Lord. Okay, this is what I think is the key thing right here. Let me say it again. It's taking a Sabbath day or a day of intermission in honor and obedience to the Lord. Now, so we can get real legalistic and hold to Saturday only, or we can live by the spirit of what God meant when he declared the Sabbath day. All right? So let me go on from there. So the Sabbath day was not born out of the law. This is one of the issues we have with a lot of people. The law says we don't live in the law, we don't live by the law, and so forth. Well, first off, let me say this. I haven't said this before in any of my lessons on the believer's journey, but the Sabbath day was not created in the law. It was created in Genesis when God created the heavens and the earth. It was that seventh day. But more than that, the law was not created for salvation. All these people that want to think that the law was, you live by the law for salvation, that's not why God created the law. First off, the Ten Commandments were created to help liberate the Hebrew people who just came out of Egypt. They were in oppression. They were in slavery, and he wanted to liberate them. He gave them this moral code to help them understand what it meant to honor him and to honor one another, to live in a society that was, honoring and living for God and honoring and living with other people. Okay? It's probably one of the best moral codes in the world, in the history of the world. So it was not given for salvation. That's really important because God, from the beginning, his requirement for salvation was still faith. It was still living in holiness. It was still living in obedience. Okay, it was still living righteously. And these are areas. These four areas are given in Genesis before the law was given. It's given in the New Testament. Same thing. We live by faith, by holiness, by righteous living, by obedience. And so we have to understand that. So the law is not given for salvation. Now, in the time of Jesus, and even up until today, the Jews at the time were treating the law like it was salvation. And it's not that way. They were perverting the law. They're corrupted the law. So we have to understand that. So today, when we look at the Bible and we see the problems that Jesus had with the Pharisees or that Paul had, understand they're living in a time where the law was corrupted by the people, and they're having to struggle with this within the people. Okay? So the law was given to help us live with one another, honor God, and this is what the law was about. It was about the Ten Commandments. It was about liberation, okay? Liberation and understanding what it was to live with one another in a free society, in a society of morality, okay? Because I imagine when you're living in oppression and slavery, there's not much morality. There's not much life of being free and having freedom in a place of slavery, okay? So that's where we need to understand that. And I want to say that very clearly because too many people that fight with this are trying to claim that the law, including the Ten Commandments, was given for salvation, and it wasn't ever given for that purpose. It was a lot of the problems of the scribes and the teachers, and as Jesus' day, the Pharisees also, who were perverting and corrupting the law. Okay? Read the law. You'll find that it's all about, taking care of one another, living with another. You have punishments, you have rewards, you have things that you do to help a society live in a moral sense that grows and blossoms. And that's really what the law is about. Okay, so first off, let's talk about what the Sabbath is. Okay, so the Sabbath is, first off, a day of rest, number one. Okay, we find in Genesis chapter 2, verse 2, it says, by the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day, and he made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating all that he had done. Notice that he had made it holy. That's a big deal here. He didn't make the hour holy. He didn't make the getting together holy. He made the day holy. Okay, and if you want to call it a day as in, morning till night, or if you want to call it a day as in the 24-hour day, it's up to you. But a day, he made the day holy. And that's what we need to understand. Number two, the Sabbath day is a day of worship to the Lord. Okay? And and also, I'm going to add this one. It's a day of holy assembly with believers. Okay? That's something also that's given in the Old Testament, and we talk about it in the New Testament. So in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 3, it says, there are 6 days when you may work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest, a day of sacred assembly. You are not to do any work wherever you live. It is a Sabbath day, or Sabbath to the Lord. Okay, it's an intermission to the Lord. So it's a day of worship to the Lord. What is worship? Worship is the giving of yourself. It's a gift of you to God. That's worship. Okay? Holy assembly of all believers, or all of you, it's getting together with other believers, honoring other believers, praying for one another, building one another up. So this is part of the day, the Sabbath day, and it talks about it in Leviticus there, chapter 23. Okay, so this is really, really important. Okay, the fourth thing, it's freedom from bondage. Okay, so in Deuteronomy 15:15, it says, remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you, and that is why I give you this command today. Okay, so he released them from slavery, and in releasing them, he gave them a day they probably never had. Remember, I said they were in slavery. Most likely, they didn't have a free day. Most slaves don't. Okay, some do, but you're still slaves. But he freed them. He gave, here's a day that you have that you need to rest in this day. You need to worship your God in this day. You need to assemble with others for this day. So basically, it's a day that's free from bondage. Now, the only other exception to the Sabbath day, whether it's like on a Saturday or Sunday or however you want to hold it, is if you are having to work for survival. If there are people out there, in the military. For right now, we have a war going on over in Ukraine. They may have to work 7 days a week protecting their country because they're being attacked. In that case, they may not have a day, a Sabbath day. They may have to be working all 7 days. And there might be other situations, but that it would be, one exception, for example. The fifth thing is the Sabbath day is a day of honoring the Lord. Okay? In Mark, the New Testament, in Mark chapter 2, verses 27 and 28, Jesus says, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is also Lord of the Sabbath. So all of you people that think the Sabbath day is not a big deal in the New Testament, Jesus claims that the Sabbath day is his. He claims that he is the Son of Man and he is the Lord of the Sabbath. So here we go, and Jesus honored the Sabbath day. He went to the synagogue, he went to the temple. He was a good Jew. He did the things he was supposed to as unto the Lord. Okay, he was Lord of the Sabbath, and he is the Son of Man. So we need to understand the New Testament talks about this, and that we need to honor the Lord, and that's part of the things that the Sabbath is for us, is honoring the Lord. Okay? So here are some things the Sabbath day represents, or what it does for humans, if you will. Okay? Those who honor the Lord in keeping the Sabbath day holy are normally healthier physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. I mean, people that work 7 days a week, they usually don't live as long as people who take a day off every week. People who work 7 days a week normally have strokes before those who take a day off because they're stressed out. And what is the Sabbath supposed to do? Well, when it says rest, it says rest. You know, that means you're going to relax your body, you're going to relax your mind, relax your emotions. Okay? I mean, when I was young, we went to church on Sunday morning, we went to Sunday school, we went to church in the evening on Sundays, and then on Wednesdays, we went to church in the evening. Sometime in the middle of the week or on the weekend, we'd have a Bible study. We worked ourselves in a way that brought the word and brought fellowship and brought rest and helped us in these ways that were emotionally healthy for us, spiritually healthy, and physically and mentally. So it's really good to know that. So this is one of the ways that the Sabbath day helps us as humans. Another way it is that we have healthier family lives. Those people who take the Sabbath and they honor the Sabbath, they use that day with their families, with the Lord, and honoring that, they usually have better and healthier family lives. I know pastors, I know friends who are really good with this, who take the whole day and they spend the day with the Lord in assembling with other people. Then afterwards and in between, they spend the time with their kids and with their families. And these kids grow up to be amazing followers of Jesus. You just have healthier family lives. Another thing, you have a better community of friends. Okay? This is really important. When things are hurting, you're going bad, going down. I mean, look at the way society was and is. Years ago, when people were more involved in their church or assembling together, and when things fell hardship fell, you had people in the community helping you. Today, when people that don't have that, they're looking for the government to help them, and they're pleading for the government to help them. They don't have that community of friends like you would if you belong to a community of believers. Okay? And lastly, those who keep the Sabbath are usually happier people. Okay? I don't know how to say that, but I guess they'd have polls out, and they just come out to say they're basically happier. Okay, so to recap this whole thing here, the Sabbath day is a day of worship. We see that in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 3. And actually, you can see all these verses in my YouTube underneath in the description. So it's a day of worship, Leviticus 23, 3, as well as a day of rest and refreshment for mankind. You find that in Exodus 23, 12. God rested and refreshed. Okay, in Exodus 31, 17, also, the Sabbath was the covenant, the sign of God's lordship over the creation. There we go to Genesis chapter 2, verse 2. I think it's 2 and 3. By observing the Sabbath, believers of Jesus confess that they are God's redeemed people, subject to his lordship, to obey him. You find that in Mark 2:28. I think it's also written the same exact verse in Matthew. And believers are his stewards to show mercy and kindness and liberality to all. In other words, in the Old Testament, it said that when people were down and hurting, or hungry, you had food in their fields to feed them. You would help them. You find that in Exodus 23:12. You also find it in Leviticus 25:11. These are things that we should do in today's world. Show kindness, give liberally, okay? And we find this is part of why we have the Sabbath day. It just helps us for a better all-around life, in of yourself, in of your family, and in of your community. And you find yourself with a better relationship with God when you keep the Sabbath day. And I'm not talking about keeping a Sabbath hour that you go to church for an hour, you skip Sunday school, you skip the rest of the day, and you go back to work, or you go off and you leave your family, you go off and play golf. Because the problem with that is when those things become so important to you, you're back in slavery. Okay, I meant to say this earlier. It's like you're a slave to your work anyway. You're a slave to money. Okay, which in fact you're back to breaking the first commandment. What is more important to you than God? Is it your job? Is it money? Is it all these other things? So if you're partaking on all these things and not having a Sabbath day, not having an intermission day to honor the Lord because you're too busy working, then what it says to me, and I'm sure I could back this up with scripture, is that you are breaking the first commandment of honoring God and no other gods, because now these other things become more important to you than God is, which means that they're idols. Okay? So I think it's really important that we understand that. So the Sabbath day is huge, really, really big, important commandment. I think that it's one of the most important commandments we have. And anyway, if you need to watch this over and over, take my scriptures and look them up. Feel free. If you want to write me, I really encourage you to do so. I know there's a lot of people out there that really struggle with this very commandment. And also in their struggle, there's a big division within Christendom, okay, because of the fight of the law, of worshiping the Sabbath or worshiping on the Sabbath, or not having to go, or not thinking it's written in the New Testament. So I think that, we need to really understand this is an important commandment, not only spiritually and biblically, but also, like I said earlier, for your physical, mental, emotional health. It's a lot of stuff there that we need just on our daily basis to help us in our families, to help us in life. Okay? Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you'll have a wonderful day, a wonderful rest of the week, and aloha.